Welcome to Galaxy Brains.
An infinite amount of cash.
I'm your host, Alex Thorn.
The U.S. banking system is sound and resilient.
Bitcoin made a new all-time high.
If you're not long, you're short.
Satoshi's going to come on there, laugh hysterically, go quiet, all Bitcoin's going to be erased.
Bitcoin's the best crypto out there.
Bitcoin is going to zero.
Welcome back to Galaxy Brains. As always, I'm your host, Alex Thorn, head of firm-wide research at Galaxy, and this is another great episode of the Singapore Tapes. We're talking with Alex Svanevik, founder and CEO of Nansen, a powerful data company in crypto. Alex has been on the show before, so he's a repeat guest, and it's a fascinating conversation about where crypto is going and crypto data and surveilling on-chain activities and stuff that I think you'll enjoy. Before we get to that, I need to remind you to please refer to the link to the disclaimer in the podcast notes and know that none of the information in this podcast constitutes investment advice or an offer, recommendation, or solicitation by Galaxy or any of its affiliates to buy or sell any securities. Let's hop right into it with Alex. Welcome back to Galaxy Brains, Alex Svanevik, CEO, founder of Nansen. Thanks for coming back on.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be a repeat guest. I'm a friend of the pod, as they say.
I appreciate that so much. And we were just saying very few people have actually been on this podcast twice, which actually I'm kind of impressed by that we've actually found so many people that are willing to talk to me. But it's like you, it's Nick Carter, it's Dan Matuszewski from CMS Holdings. And I think that is Casey Rodermore was on twice. I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's a good group of people to be part of. I'm honored.
So the last time you were on the podcast, I think it was February 2023, if I recall correctly. It was definitely in between January and March at some point because Signature Bank hadn't been taken over and Silicon Valley Bank hadn't collapsed yet. But it was after FTX, and because a big thing we talked about was how Binance was partnering with Nansen to display its proof of reserves. And I remember I was kind of grilling you on some of that because it had just happened and was like, well, you know, how do we know these are their addresses or whatever? But not that I want to talk about that specifically. That was 18 months ago. Market feels a lot different, does it not?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, that was a pretty rough time, to be honest. The way we approached it was that we wanted to just create transparency for the industry, right? And we already track the wallets of all of the centralized exchanges. And so we figured, why don't they just disclose it so we'll have more of kind of an official way to track it. And so our team basically just connected all the different exchanges and then put out, one page per exchange. So I think it was, and we obviously didn't charge for it or anything like that. So it was more of a favor to the industry, both for the exchanges, because people were literally panicking back then, and also for investors to get a little bit more trust, right? So, yeah, it was.
And
a lot happened.
Those just are updated automatically, right? I mean, you follow the addresses, so.
Yeah, I mean, so we already do sort of algorithmic tagging of the exchange addresses so that like they don't have to disclose it.
Some clustering algorithms that
but
you
that's
find new ones.
But that's inference based.
Yeah.
So they don't like give it the stamp of approval. So it's kind of, we are putting that out there as this is what we believe. But these ones are like official. They're coming to us from them, and so it's a little bit different. But it's true. It's been a pretty wild. It's been like an interesting development in the industry since then. A lot of things have happened, both in crypto and also with our company. We've rolled out Nansen 2. Last week we announced that we acquired a staking firm called Stake With Us.
Yeah, very
which we can
interesting.
talk more about later. And but it's been, and then the whole like AI sort of boom has happened.
I mean, some of the main uses of AI generally in crypto that I'm aware of are some of these machine learning algorithms to do address clustering that you and Nansen, you and like Chainalysis and Elliptic and Inca Digital and others use to figure out probabilistically associated addresses.
Correct.
But now there's this whole, real AI boom, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Like,
no, absolutely. I mean, we can talk a little bit about AI because that's one of the topics I love. My background is actually in AI before I started in crypto. I like to say I was in AI before it was cool.
Yeah.
But if we think about AI for Nansen in particular, there's sort of three elements to the product strategy that touches on AI. And one of them is what you talked about, which is what we describe as like the data moat angle. Like, can you use AI to get a sort of a stronger data moat? And specifically, many people know us for the labeling of addresses.
Yep.
And we've always had a combination of man and machine to label addresses. But now with AI, you're kind of taking that to the next level.
Yeah.
And it's interesting from just an economic perspective. If you have like a human labeler, how much it costs to get one label, and then now you have AI and it costs like maybe 5 or 10 cents. It's like 100x reduction potentially of the research you have to put in to like track things down and all that stuff.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
because that's like the tools, the visualizers, the front end UXs. Those are good and important. Yours are good, and of course they're important from a product standpoint. But the real secret sauce, in my view, from these, whether it's for market intelligence, which is kind of how I view Nansen, or if it's for compliance and in legal investigations like Chainalysis, the IP in my mind is actually the attribution database and the ability to maintain and update it.
Totally. I mean, like if you think of just which assets do we have as a company, that is like both the database itself, but also the capability and the technology and the know-how and the talent in-house that knows how to do this stuff. And so, yeah, that is like one of the big assets we have. Just touch real quick on like the other aspects of AI with our product. The second part is what I call fast and fluid interfaces. Mm-hmm. And so this to me is like the most futuristic part of AI, where you can imagine like talking to Nansen and then seeing charts and stuff being created on the fly. That's where we want to get to, and then you bounce back and forth. And as an investor, you can kind of get the confidence that you often need to have through visual representation, like charts and so on, to build a bit of like conviction in something like an investment thesis or whatever. That's why we do, charts and PowerPoints and whatnot to motivate an investment. Right. So that sort of, I think of it as like voice and visuals.
So interesting.
I have this scene from Blade Runner that's like stuck in my mind, where Rick Deckard, played by Harrison Ford, is talking to a screen, and he's like, pan out, zoom in, go to the left, go to the right. That back and forth is what I want to get Nansen to one day, where you can actually just speak to it and you get that fast and fluid interface, basically.
So like, show me a time series of all of the like DeFi trader tagged addresses in aggregates, like activity on Uniswap.
Yes. And the response time has to be like sub 1 second, right? It needs to,
it's really fast.
It needs to be really fast and fluid. So we have some of this stuff now, but it's kind of, I would say the UX is a little bit clunky, right? Like we have this feature called Smart Segments, where you can go in and you say, hey, give me all the addresses that ever traded Pudgy Penguins and, I don't know, Aave or whatever. And it takes those rules and creates the segment and creates it on the fly really quickly, actually. And then you can use that segment for other things. But you should be able to just express that in language, and it does it on the fly, right?
Very interesting.
Yeah. The third part, by the way, is personalization, which is another thing that I think is totally underutilized in crypto. Like in Web 2, every product you use is personalized, like Spotify or, Twitter or whatever. True. But in crypto, weirdly, we don't really have that much personalization in our products. And I think, the way we're building Nansen, and with Nansen 2, which is very focused on the investor segment, we're trying to basically let you track your portfolio, and then the portfolio and the history of your trading and all that stuff can inform the AI on, hey, what are some trades you might want to make, right? You have to find the right balance between not being like an investment advisor, but like basically using your portfolio and your history to recommend things to look at least. Right?
Pattern analyses and
like now you see it's the same for everyone. Like everyone gets the same alpha, and then is it really alpha? But if everyone gets personalized alpha,
it's quite interesting.
I think that's much more
learning from your behaviors and suggesting similar patterns that you could execute.
Yeah.
That sounds very powerful, and there's so much data to examine on chain in particular, right? Is that
totally?
I mean, you're an AI guy, you said. I mean, is that part of the motivation, was just the voluminous amount of information behind Nansen in general?
Yeah, I mean, I always thought of, it's called Nansen.ai. That's our domain, right? And I always thought of AI as this kind of ubiquitous force in the product. It's not like, oh, here's the AI section.
Right.
No, everything's powered by AI.
Yeah.
Right? The labeling, the user experience, the recommendations, or the content that you see, right? It's all AI powered. But interestingly, when we started it, we didn't have some of the recent advances in AI. So I feel like now we've kind of accelerated the development of the product. Right. And like literally we have done that internally, just with having engineers be more productive, designers like ship things faster, by using AI tools internally, but the product is also very rapidly going to become, I think, much more powerful because of the advancements.
It's one of the
AI.
interesting things, I've heard a bunch of, we've produced research on crypto and AI, the overlap, the integration, the interoperability, whatever you want to say. I've heard a lot of people talk about it. Mike Novogratz actually spoke very eloquently about it. I think at the Barclays event, was that where he was? He was at a Barclays event. We don't hear that much about, I don't know why, about its use for the giant amount of data that blockchains create, which is just an enormous amount of data, right? I mean, especially like something like Solana
Yes.
has it's like the Bitcoin blockchain's entire history every couple days on that chain.
Oh yeah, tell me about it. By the way, we're shipping Solana to professional customers next week, and then to
Wow.
all users next month. So I had to get that plug in there.
I cannot wait because, I
That's
was,
the one thing you're missing. That's,
No, I know.
All our users are like, we need Solana. Where's Solana?
well,
And then
I mean, in
it's
your
so
defense,
hard
pretty much nobody has it.
because it's so hard to
Yeah.
integrate. Like the data volumes, it's not EVMs. All the data formats are
I
different.
remember in fall 21, I wanted to write about how it was the Sol Luna AVAX trade.
Right.
Those couple months when it
Yeah.
was the capital was
I
moving
remember
from,
Susie was talking
and I
about
wanted
that,
to
yeah.
write something about how Solana was taking users from Ethereum. It was when Ethereum fees were super high. It was before the merge, before the L2s really existed. And all I needed was some basic blockchain data, like the count of transactions over some time series, like daily transaction count. We knew it was up, right? And I was like, I talked to the Solana Foundation, I talked to some big investors in Solana and its ecosystem, and I was like, guys, someone has to help me get this chart. Like, it's a very basic chart. And they're like, oh, it'll be like 3 or 4 weeks, bro, before we can pull that data for you. And I was like, if you don't get me this data, I'm gonna have to say this note that I was writing, I'm gonna have to say Ethereum's getting beaten by a chain that no one can possibly operate. Like I'm gonna have to if it's so hard to operate, you can't even produce basic metrics for it. They've come a long way since then,
totally.
but it's still very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, like getting the sort of macro stats. You have other companies as well that are doing that. But if you want to get down to the really granular stats on trading,
Programs,
investing,
addresses.
what are the most profitable Solana traders, like addresses that have the highest P&L,
Right.
that have the highest win rates,
Right.
the smart money, as we like to call it, right,
Right.
at Nansen. And literally next week, that's launching where you can track the P&L, you can track the win rates.
That's a
of
new
all the
era.
Solana. Yeah,
That's a new era
I
now.
think in a way, I mean, I don't want to sort of make Nansens' role bigger than it is, but I do think it could potentially help the Solana ecosystem a lot. It's a great ecosystem already, but it could sort of take it to the next level because you get more transparency and it gets more fun. This is kind of, one of the things that's unique about investing in crypto, that everything is on the blockchain. And it's
Right.
transparent, it's real time, and if you have the right tools, you can track what people are doing.
Right.
So, frankly, we've had a lot of users who sign up to Nansen, and then they're like, okay, let me go and check the Solana section. And it's like, oh, there is no Solana section.
But that just shows, the amount of sophistication that what you're describing is
Yeah.
going to bring. It's well beyond. Back then, they couldn't even produce the basic macro metrics.
Yes.
And now we're going to get something like that. I can't wait to see it because
It's gonna be cool.
I mean, we're huge in Solana. Galaxy is, I think,
Yeah.
the second largest validator on Solana.
Oh,
now.
wow.
So
That's huge.
Yeah. So but again, I like to drive a lot of our research content from data, and it's very hard to get data
Yeah.
on Solana. So
Let's-
it makes it hard to cover.
Yeah, let's connect our teams and,
Yeah, I
and
can't
we'll
wait.
spend an hour looking at Solana data together.
So I wanted to ask you, Alex. You're in Singapore. Nansen is in Singapore, and when we are in Singapore now for Token 2049, I wasn't here last year, but I'm told that it's double the size of last year, and I can attest. I'm not sure how many companies. It's packed. It's absolutely packed with people and companies. Is this success of Token 2049 here, is that partially a Singapore story? What is happening with crypto in Singapore?
Yes, I think that is exactly right. Token 2049 in Singapore is, I think, the #1 crypto conference globally now. And the sort of related point, and one thing I've noticed being here is that so many of the US folks who are here are based in New York City. So to me, I feel like New York City and Singapore are kind of, I think New York City is #1 for sure. But I think Singapore also is kind of elevating itself, away from the pack, right? It's sort of distancing itself from the pack. And these two cities, I think, are going to do very well, like in the crypto ecosystem. We also
Yep.
have other interesting places in Asia for crypto, like Seoul or Korea more broadly. Huge market, right? In
Yep.
terms of trading activity. You have Dubai, obviously. And then it feels like there's a bit of a comeback story with Japan after having like over-regulated the industry.
Right. It was very hard. My understanding was you had to have you couldn't launch a business there unless you lived there.
Yeah.
Physically. So it made it very hard for the big international exchanges and whomever to start operating there, and then
Yeah.
other restrictions that made it very hard in Japan.
Yeah.
It seems like that should be a very fertile ground for
Totally.
crypto, right?
But, yeah.
Major market. I mean,
Yes.
one of the most important markets in the world. Love to speculate, right? I mean, truly, I mean, right? Lots of trading, huge trading volumes in equities in Japan. I mean,
Yeah,
lots
absolutely.
of investment, and
Yeah.
obviously a tech hub.
But by the way, I was at a dinner with the King of Bhutan last night.
Those guys mine Bitcoin, a lot of it.
They do. They have lots of hydropower.
Yeah.
And really great people, actually. And the king was really an inspiring person. I feel like I could hear Lee Kuan Yew in his voice, the sort of founder of modern Singapore. And I asked him, and he said he actually knew him personally.
Wow.
But the reason I mention this is because he has this vision of Singapore, Bhutan, and Dubai as becoming this triangle.
It's so interesting.
Yeah, of cities. And they're actually building a new city in Bhutan.
Oh, wow.
And I think probably next year there's going to be more news about it.
Huh.
And it has some interesting crypto elements to it. And so he's really forward-leaning and a real visionary.
This is kind of like the network state that
Yes.
Balaji talks about.
Yeah. I think Balaji has spoken with them. as
Yeah,
well. Balaji lives here, by the way, in Singapore. As you
Oh,
may
does he
know.
really?
Yeah.
Well,
So
there you
we've gone for walks together around like.
There's a whole thing happening here then. It's
Yeah,
really
I mean,
interesting.
I think okay, so a couple more thoughts on Singapore, right?
Yeah.
Just from someone who lives here. When I moved here in 2021, I was really bullish on Singapore. Then the whole Terra, FTX, all this stuff happened. The next year, I became really bearish, and I thought the regulators are going to kill the whole industry here. Now I feel like we're kind of coming back. And you see this because a lot of people have moved here, and the crypto density in Singapore is super high. And just in my neighborhood, I live in a neighborhood called River Valley, and I like to say it's the new Silicon Valley. And you have like crypto founders and executives, like we just see each other at like the breakfast places and
Yeah.
coffee places, and it does feel like a village with skyscrapers in a way.
There are a lot of skyscrapers. This is my
Yes.
first time in Singapore. It's beautiful.
And it's so green as well, right?
Can I actually just tell us a quick story? 'Cause
Yeah, go
maybe
for
this is related. I'd love to get your take on this about the culture in Singapore, which I really don't know much about. Again, I've been here for about 36 hours at this point. I lost something at the airport. I left it on the airplane when I landed after midnight yesterday. So I wake up in the morning and I'm looking for it, and I realize, crap, I must have left it on the plane. I go to the Korean Air website. They've taken a photo of every single thing they find on the plane. I'm like, there it is. I get to the airport. It takes me 20 minutes to retrieve it. 20.
Yeah, there you go.
Guy comes out with it. Oh my gosh, Mr. Thorn, we're so happy you came back. We've been waiting for you to come back to give you this. I was like blown away. In America, this would have taken.
Or in Europe, yeah.
I mean, if it wasn't stolen outright, no offense to the Americans. I am American. I love America. But like, it would probably, maybe I'd get it back in 6 weeks, right? I mean,
Yes.
there was something about the pride and efficiency combination that I was really
Totally.
shocked, to be honest.
No, they have very strong values here, right?
Yeah.
And that's partially it's the legacy of Lee Kuan Yew, right? The founder of modern Singapore. Everyone should read the book From Third World to First. It's one of the best books ever written, I think, that I've read at least. And a lot of it has to do with, I kind of think of Singapore in some ways, without getting like too political, it's kind of an oasis of certain values in the world. If you think of meritocracy, if you think of efficiency, obviously, but also this, I think it's called like a kampong spirit, like a village spirit somehow. And it does have this unique feel of being a strong community, but at the same time, it is a big city.
Yeah.
Right? And like sometimes it's kind of hard to reconcile the idea of like a big city with like community and safety and all these. You
Yeah.
kind of associate big cities with crime and like all sorts of stuff. So I think it's a great place to live. I have my family here, my wife, my daughter, and I think it stands out as an oasis of certain values that I really appreciate myself. And yeah, Lee Kuan Yew is like a huge inspiration in many ways for me.
You mentioned earlier, to pivot a little bit, that you acquired a staking company.
Yes.
What business does a data insights company have owning a staking?
Yeah, great question. So I think you can look at this from two angles. The first angle is that we have an organic inbound flow of investors using our product.
That's true.
That's the first part, right? They come to Nansen to track their portfolio, to discover which new tokens they should buy, to perform due diligence, to track what the smart money is doing, etc. So we have a natural organic distribution that is focused on investors. And of course, investors have tokens, right? This is on-chain investors, because our core focus is on-chain investors, like crypto native investors, right? We are not really focused on Wall Street or trying to get TradFi funds and so on to come into crypto. There are other, companies doing that. I think you guys have played a huge role in that regard, but we are very focused on the crypto natives and the on-chain investor. And so we have that natural distribution towards them. The other side of the equation is from the chain's perspective, right? Our mission is to surface a signal and create winners. And the creating winners part, I think, is very relevant for chains. We want to make sure that chains get the transparency, the distribution, the exposure that they deserve. And so we've found that if we integrate a chain into Nansen, by the way, every chain that we've ever integrated has grown its activity afterwards. Again, I don't want to say that's because of Nansen necessarily, but maybe we have a little bit
one
of
often
impact.
preceded the other, right? Is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
You integrated it, and it also then grew.
Yeah, because you get more eyeballs. It's like investor eyeballs, right, on the chain. And
so that's just to hammer on that point. Are they are like, say, a newly launched chain, or are they coming to you and other data companies saying, please cover our chain?
Yeah, because they realize they need, it's, when you launch a blockchain, it's a little bit like a city. And you need like a hospital, a police station, a school, and a blockchain needs a block explorer, it needs a portfolio tracker, it needs on-chain analytics, it needs RPC node providers. And so every chain knows this, and they have the kind of playbook of checking all the boxes.
Yep.
And so they come to us and they say, hey, we should integrate with you guys. And what we could do and what we have done in the past is we charge for it, right?
Well, there's engineering costs for you, right?
Exactly, because it's very hard and very expensive, especially like Solana and so on. But now we are moving towards the model where we instead run validators for the chains.
Interesting.
And so this is how it all comes together.
Because you need the data out of the chain, and the validators can get it, right? Or have it, depending on the chain.
Exactly. And then we have a natural inflow of tokens from our user base. And so what I kind of want to get to, I think, you need to skate to where the puck is going. And I think some of the business models, are still from the sort of Web 1, Web 2 era, right? Ads, I think, has been the default business model of the internet. Subscriptions, arguably, in the sort of ZERP era, maybe, Netflix and so on, it's been pretty common to just charge 10, 20, 30 bucks a month, etc. But I think the business model of the future, especially for crypto companies, is going to be based on assets and transactions. And so that's where I want to get to with Nansen over time. And to me, this is kind of a small step in that direction. And you can, basically what it means, to be very concrete, is if you're an investor, you can go to stake.nansen.ai. You can literally stake, and it's totally non-custodial. It's through our product. Of course, institutions can connect with us as well, and we give certain sort of additional rewards to stakers. Like you can get a free Nansen subscription, you get API credits, all these different things that funds want. We also have NSN points that are coming next year, which I'll talk more about then. And so I think we have a pretty unique value proposal to investors that want to stake tokens.
I hadn't really thought of it,
chains.
but it makes sense. And now I'm not sure why I didn't, why I didn't think of it, because I do know that most of the data companies do run nodes of some kind. Validators or otherwise, depending on the chain.
Yeah.
To get the data. I mean.
Yeah. I think the unique thing about us, though, is that we have this laser focus on the investors, and they are the ones who have the tokens. So that adds up the delegations, right, when they stake with us.
I wanted to ask you too, Alex, before we wrap, because when did you guys found Nansen?
2020 we launched.
So-
April 2020, 1 month after COVID started.
Oh, wow. So it's just over 4 years,
Yeah.
right? Gosh, a lot has changed. Yeah, April 2020, you said? Is that when you said it?
Yeah.
I remember those days well. Right before DeFi summer. So
Yeah, exactly. We were very lucky with the timing.
the
for sure.
Yam finance era, those were the good old days
all
of DeFi.
all the food coins,
Yeah.
yam, sashimi finance.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like, yeah, it's pretty.
A lot has changed since then. We went through, if you count this as a bull market, although that's maybe a topic for a different discussion, because I don't think it really is one. It's really a Bitcoin market
Yeah,
right now.
I agree. Yeah.
But if you do count it, it's now been 2 bull markets since, right? Because you launched right before the 21 sort of bull market. Knowing your user base, I mean, obviously, like I said, Galaxy, we use Nansen, like we have a subscription, at least one I'm aware of. How would you describe like the current state of adoption of digital assets, whether it's the pro users you describe or the retail users? Like, are you seeing an a resurgence of interest following the, 22, 23 downturn? Like, has interest? Yeah.
Yeah, we've been growing steadily since November last year. There was like 2022 and 23 were pretty rough.
Yeah.
For all crypto companies.
I think that's right.
And then November 2023 is when we started growing again, and we've grown like every month since then, which is great. Some of it is actually driven by, I think, meme coins and people like speculating on meme coins. A lot of it is also like BTC, ETFs, ETH ETFs, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But I would say, it's kind of, when you're in crypto, you don't always see the progress somehow. It's a little bit like you're a frog being boiled very slowly, right?
Yeah.
But the infrastructure and the products are actually way better now than they were like when we launched Nansen.
They really are.
Yeah, and so back then, I mean, it's not that long ago that you really could only like swap tokens on chain with Uniswap on Ethereum L1, and it cost like $50 in gas fees to swap. Well, now you can do it on L2s, you can do it on Solana, you can do it on other L1s. That's like to me, it's actually a very meaningful thing, because there's no way you could scale to get actual mass adoption of retail investors.
Right.
If you have to pay $50 for a swap, doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And then you have things like account abstraction, right? And just the creation of wallets. So I would say like we're kind of like, my view of the future is that every asset will be tokenized, right? That's kind of what we're working towards. It's going to take a long time, but we're still in the very beginning of that journey. And the way I reconcile that vision with the speculation and the meme coins and the NFTs and all that stuff is that all of this craziness just funds the infrastructure and the new products, and the same protocols are going to be you can use them for, today you're collateralizing a pudgy penguin on an NFTFi protocol, but in 10 years you might be using the same protocol to collateralize a house.
I think that's right.
Right? And so it's kind of like these silly toy world versions of finance, and it looks silly in the short term, but actually it's a really important way to drive the creation of all the infrastructure and products.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, and with regulatory easing or maturity or an innovation-focused regulatory regime globally or in whichever jurisdiction, then maybe you would see some of those toys get swapped out for financial products.
They're almost like
real-world
placeholders
assets.
for like maybe real-world assets.
Yeah. This has been great. I think what Nansen is doing is very interesting. I cannot wait to see this new the Solana drop. I know that we are in need of data on Solana. So
amazing.
Alex, thank you so much for coming back on Galaxy Brains.
Thanks for having me.
That's it for this episode of the Singapore Tapes. Thanks to our guest Alex Svanevik, CEO and founder of Nansen, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to Galaxy Brains, the weekly podcast from Galaxy Research. If you enjoy the show, please like, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To follow Galaxy Research, sign up for our weekly newsletter at gdr.email, read our content at galaxy.com/research, and follow us on Twitter at GLXYResearch. See you next week.